Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of A Piece of Ash. This is my monthly show where you get to ask me questions, catch up with what I've been doing this month, and talk a bit about whatever you guys want to talk about, wargaming wise, hobby wise, or the co-op and myself. So month of November, what happened in November? I got to take a great trip to Tucson Comic-Con. Dave Hatt, the organizer for their gaming section, invited me down. I got to hang out for a day, record some battle reports with some awesome folks. I got to report it with Patreon backer Matt Tillman. I got to play an awesome game of Horus Heresy on a full Zone Mortalis table with him against his Mechanicum army that you'll see coming up soon. I got to play a couple of actually great War Machine games against my namesake, press ganger Mr. Barker, against a GMG, I guess, miniature guy, Mr. Barker. We played 2 75-point games against his trolls with my Cator army. Which was a ton of fun, and I got to play against the local henchman, Frank, and his beautifully painted Von Schill crew fighting into the honeypot itself. They'd actually converted a table to look like the honeypot, and you'll see that coming up soon. So it was a blast. Got to meet a ton of great people, chat with people about the hobby, and just what's been going on with them. A big shout out to Sophia, who took time out of her busy Pokemon catching schedule at the actual convention to let her dad come by and say hi. She watches the battle reports with her dad, and it was great meeting you, and of course your father too. And actually, I think your grandpa was actually there as well. So yeah, so that was just an absolute blast. Got to meet a ton of cool people, and I'll absolutely, hopefully, get to go do it again. Today, I'm going to be working on the Escape and Blight Scramblers for Blood Bowl 2016. This will be my 2016 team. I have the initial box here, but I'll be supplementing it with 2 more. I need 16 players. I get 12. I'm going to be getting 2 more gutter runners that Owen's got. He's going to give me, plus a rat ogre, plus another lineman. And then the leftovers I'll have from the sprue I'm going to use to make my Chaos Renegades team. So if you haven't seen, there is actually a supplement out now of legacy teams. For 2016 Blood Bowl, all the additional stuff like Amazons, Lizardmen, everybody that's not in, where is it, Death Zone Season 1 so far, everybody's not in this book right here, has teams that are available for download off the website. So super duper handy. I'm going to try and get these guys assembled and undercoated this week. I got other things to paint next week, but if they're ready to go, which is my biggest hurdle always, so if I sit down and have an hour to build things, I might as well build things that otherwise I wouldn't sit down and build, then I can get them painted and I'm ready to rock and roll. So let's get on with our first question. The Rambunctious Orc asks, when it comes to stripping painted plastic, fine cast, or resin minis, what's your weapon of choice and how do you go about it? Do you find certain products to be better than others? So all of those things are super, you need to be careful to be able to do them right. And the weapon of choice I have is a product called Simple Green, but not actually the green one. Simple Green Purple, which is the strongest sort of level of Simple Green, I think it's like the industrial strength one, is the one I typically use. And I just leave stuff in a bucket for a while. You have to be more careful with resin because unfortunately, resin is kind of a catch-all term. And what one company calls resin might be different for another. And what one company calls plastic might be resin. So I'm usually super careful with resin. I'll only leave stuff in a Simple Green bath that's resin for like an hour, and then I'll go check on it just to make sure it's okay and give it a scrub. If it's starting to get really soft, then I probably won't try and strip it. But if something's resin and it's not, if it's primed properly underneath, so I know that paint will stick to it, and it's not terribly over painted, I'm typically more likely to just prime over it and start over than I am to try and strip it, because resin detail is usually pretty fine anyway, and I'm more nervous about stripping resin usually than I am about plastic. So if it's styrene plastic, I'll leave it in Simple Green forever. But if it's a weird type of resin I'm not super familiar with, I'll be a little bit more careful. And yeah, Simple Green Purple. Warpstone Addiction Clinic asks, hey Ash, I could use your eclectic knowledge of games featuring tiny painted model people to tell me about a game you think deserves more recognition, and conversely, a game that you find to be oddly popular. So, what games do I think deserve more recognition, and what games do I find oddly popular? Game that deserves, I mean, that's kind of like the whole point of what I do, so I'm not even sure, I'm not even sure how to start answering that question. Because there's so many oddly popular games that I know are popular that I've never really understood why they're so popular. That's hard to say because it's hard to say that without it sounding like a slight. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't think that if I answer this, I don't want the answer to be I don't like this game, because that's not going to be true. But the why I'm confused why it's so popular, there's going to be a bunch of reasons behind it. That don't mean it's a bad game. So I just want to kind of like start my answer with that and say, whatever I do answer, that doesn't mean that the games that I'm qualifying here are either particularly good or particularly bad. They're just, I find it surprising that they're popular for X or Y reason. What do I want to start off with? See, it's funny because it's really hard for me because I can almost always find a reason why something would be popular. It's hard for me to come up with a reason why I think something shouldn't be popular. Well, okay. I'll start off with one, I guess. So here's one that I'm always surprised by its, I don't say popularity, but how often I get asked about it, probably. This is so hard. This is so hard. I'm looking at, okay, how about this? Okay, I'll do the easy one. The one that I think that should be more popular. Dark Age. I think the Dark Age, I'm just looking at my shelves here and it's help me formulate my answer. Dark Age should be more popular than it is. It's a really good game system. The rules are super, super tight, I find. And they're very much on the current sort of like zeitgeist as far as how they're treating their game. So you get all the rules for free, you get all the updates and stuff for free. They've been really good about updating their models as they go along. It's super affordable to get into, so you don't need to have a ton of sort of like upfront expenditure to play like what is, air quotes, a real game. They're doing more to even streamline that. So like the new starter sets are all really, really good. I find the world to be super cool. The new, like, more modern models are really, really, really like high-end sculpting wise. So like they're commissioning really high-end sculptors across Europe to do a lot of the 3D sculpts for these. They're having them 3D printed. The model quality is really, really high. The background is really cool. Like, I love there isn't a world out there like the Dark Age world, an abandoned planet. It kind of takes lots of different tropes, you know what I mean, and nails them together into one place, but there isn't really another miniature game out there that's just on one planet that kind of has the same sort of like dark, I don't want to say grim dark, because it's not grim dark, it's punk apocalyptic, So that feel, there's other small indie games out there like that, but there isn't like a major competitor game that's owned by a bigger company that isn't doing that. And I do know one of the biggest problems it's going to have is that it's been through a bunch of editions, and that Cool Mini or Not's like the most recent company to own it. So if you've had to put that stuff in a bargain bin before as a retailer, then that's going to be a struggle. You know what I mean, to bring it into your shop. If someone comes and asks you to order it and you've had to bargain bin it before, that's something that people aren't necessarily going to be like as open to as a new product maybe that they've never tried to sell before. But the thing is that like, that shouldn't really affect it because there's so many new retailers out there. There are lots of old retailers, but there's tons of new retailers out there that, that would be looking at it with fresh eyes and could definitely just pick it up and give it a go. And I'm always surprised that I don't see it in more gaming stores because it's a really high quality game. It's a game that I think is, the people working for it right now are probably the best like crew I can think of. As far as like developing, putting out rules, and like just putting the game together. They're all super talented guys. They're all really passionate about what they're doing. And it's being really well supported by like lots of releases and stuff too. So I'm always surprised I don't see more people playing it locally, and also just hear about more people playing it online. As far as ones that I find weirdly popular, I'll be honest, Horus Heresy is one I'll never really understand why it's so popular. I mean, I will understand why it's popular because it's Space Marines, and Space Marines are the thing that every 12-year-old kid wants to be until they realize what that actually means. But they're super premium Space Marines, you know what I mean? So like, there's Space Marines that cost more dollars than all the other Space Marines. And I know that in the current sort of like time, that's not that big of a barrier anymore because you've still got, you've got plastic Horus Heresy stuff before. But even before that, I had tons of friends building and painting and playing with Horus Heresy armies. And it was super popular as just like a subset of 40K long before Betrayal of Calth and the plastics that came out. So I think that would always struck me as strange because like it's almost like a it's almost like I won't say an ego thing, but definitely like a status thing that, you know, it was like the hipster version of 40K. Like, oh, I play 40K. What army do you play? Oh, I play, you know, the Legion of Stars Crusade army list, and 30K, you've probably never heard of it. And I think that's kind of maybe the mystique was why. But as far as like just ease of entry and, you know, like cost to play and stuff like that, when your codex costs like $110, because the only thing available at the time is like the first the first black book, basically the first of the Horus Heresy like hardcover books, way back when that started, like that's a pretty significant barrier. Like when you need to spend $110 just to get the rules for your army, and that's before you bought a tactical squad, which will also cost you probably $100 to $200 if you're buying it in the US or Canada, because you would buy 5 guys without bolters. They just have arms and backpacks, and then you would buy their bolters, and then you'd buy their special and heavy weapons, and then you'd buy their sergeant bits, because like that's how it was all packaged back then in the beginning. And you could easily spend 100 to 150 US on. It would be at least 150 US on one tactical squad. So you're talking about 2 troops in an HQ and 30K when it first came out. It's a $300 to $400 troop choices, and then $25 to $30 for your HQ. So like $250 to $300, and you've just got 2 troops in an HQ. This is pretty spendy. You've got roughly a 500-point army. So yeah, I think to answer the question, that was a tough one, man. Holy man, you melted my brain. I had to really think about that one. But that would be my go-to for that. Next. Holy Terra Sanitation Department asks, hey Ash, when will we see more TNT? The big thing with TNT right now is that Jay and I really want to finish Swineland, and that's been resulting in like a lot of like converting and collecting pieces to try and do it, because we've wanted to, like, Swineland's been such a like labor of love for me and Jay, that we don't really want to do anything until we have like the right models. Like I have the right model finally. Dimitri, you sent me this model. You're gonna know what I'm talking about when you see this. For Mr. Whimper without power armor on. And I think it's the best. Like, it is such a good model to represent how that man has progressed in the TNT campaign that we're running. And like just things like that, like, and we want to have the theme like carry through right to the end. So we've been doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes, and then we've just both gotten really busy. Jay travels a lot for work. And of course it's nearing the holidays and stuff, so I've got family stuff too. So it's been hard to get together, but we have a bunch of pans in the fire of stuff we want to do. There's TNT, there's Mutant Chronicles, there's a couple other games you haven't seen yet, Let's Plays for those games. So yeah, there's like a bunch of things that Jay and I have in the fire, but then the number one is finishing off Swinelands so we can do more TNT, and that's coming in the near future. And then once Swineland's done, I'll probably start a new warband for TNT for the new year, and we'll start filming some new stuff, and we'll start like a new story arc in the Great Lakes Wasteland. But yeah, it's coming, and there will certainly be more of it in the near future. Ed Markel asks, in Space Hulk, have you ever tried to go in and extract? The armor is ancient. It needs to be preserved, right? Oh, you mean like after the game's over? Like do a mission where you try and go get all the dead bodies? There's actually a couple missions in the original first edition Space Hulk where you have to try and do that. And it's almost always impossible. Because like in Space Hulk, I don't think I've ever played a game of Space Hulk where I haven't lost Space Marine. So it's like, oh, look, we got that one suit of armor back, and we lost 5 more suits of armor. So it's just like a numbers game. Like, you just abandon the people that you can't help, and then you leave them behind. I imagine that it's only after they've like gassed the place and managed to kill like every single Gene Stealer on board do they even try and go and like recover the suits, because you wouldn't be able to do it in a standard mission of Space Hulk. It'd be way too hard. Lonely Brick asks, Path to Glory, new versus old school versus super old school, thoughts and preferences. I ran several 6th edition Path to Glory campaigns. I never ran a Realm of Chaos, like old school 3rd or 4th edition 40K or fantasy one. So I can't really comment on that, but I've seen the rules. I have all the books from them. And they're like crazy. Like you have a DM super duper detailed, which is great. Like it's awesome, but like they're not for the weak of heart, basically. Between every game, you spend a month like converting what you're going to have next. And the new one's actually really good. Like I really like the new one because it lets you kind of go along with whatever your collection's progressing to be anyway. Like you're able to influence the tables enough that you're not necessarily going to roll something and just have had no intention of ever playing with that thing and have to go out and buy it. So I'd say that like I love the 6th edition one because we ran tons of it, because it was actually a supplement that came out when I was running Games Workshop stores in Southern Ontario. This is like 2002, 2003. Probably 2002, actually, because I was working in the Eaton Center. Yeah, in 2002, man, that's so long ago. That's 14 years ago. It's almost 15 years ago. That breaks my mind. So I have a lot of like, and it was like model by model. So the cool thing about that is there's not the same amount of, like when you roll a new follower, basically in the 5th edition, 6th edition, sorry, Path to Glory, you would just paint like 1 or 2 miniatures. The new one, when you get a new follower in the follower table, it's usually like a unit of guys. So there's a lot more to kind of like do there. So I kind of, if I was going to pick, probably my favorite would be the mid-tier one, the 2000 and, sorry, the 6th edition one, because you're able to do it in such a way that you're not building bajillions of miniatures in between. I do like the new one though, because it feels more like a war game, whereas the 6th edition one was more of a skirmish game. It was like a light version of Mordheim with Chaos Champions. And if you guys know me, I mean, you know my preferences for games. I like games where I can paint 10 miniatures and play. So I really like that version. Felipe the Fish asks, are beavers the final evolution point of lumberjacks? I always assumed it was the other way around. I assumed that the beaver was the proto form of a lumberjack, and that they eventually grew up to become lumberjacks. Although they are little lumberjacks in their own right, and also one of the main trade items that we brought back to England when this place was first colonized. So, yeah, there's that. The more you know. Thanks, Felipe the Fish. Marty asks, hey Ash, big fan from the UK here. Are you planning on coming over anytime soon? I know you have connections here, and I wonder if you consider doing a bat rep from Warhammer World. Well, first things first, I don't know that I'd be allowed to film in Warhammer World because I'm not really sure what the policies are there on doing that now, especially since the renovations and stuff. So I can't really say that. I don't know if I'd want to film in Warhammer World, to be honest with you, because it's so loud in there and so echoey when like gaming is going on that you wouldn't get a great result. Like it wouldn't be like a studio filmed result. When you guys see some of the stuff I filmed at Comic-Con, at Tucson Comic-Con, you'll understand more what that would be like. And it's fine, but it's not, if all of my videos were like that, you guys probably wouldn't like them as much because it's a lot of background noise, and you're kind of, there's a lot of posts you're trying to do to like make the voices more audible. Will I be over in the UK anytime soon? I have no plans to be. It's not that I wouldn't come over if I was invited, but like, I don't really have any plans to go there. And obviously with 2 little kids, asking my wife to be like, hey, can I leave for a week and go to the UK and do some work? Might not get the same result as like, hey, can I go to, Tucson for a weekend? Because if you're going to go to the UK, don't go for like a day, go for like a week. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have any plans to, but I mean, I'm always open to go to the UK. I love the UK. Potato's Gonna Potato asks, in a previous piece of Ash, you mentioned Destiny. What class and race do you play? I don't remember. I got the Legendary Edition because my sister got me some gift cards for Xbox Live. I played it for like half an hour. I don't know, Titan maybe? It sounds like a familiar word. I was a Titan. I know a little bit about the story. Like, it was a hard game for me to get into because there's so many expansions for it already. When you load that game up and you have all of the, like you buy the Legendary Edition, so you have all the content already preloaded, the game looks like you've already half finished it. So like, because there's no incentive to like unlock things, and the idea was you could just, if you bought this, you could just hop in and play it level 20 with your friends. Like, I have literally no impetus to go and play the game. I played it for a little bit. I was already level 20 because it was like, it unlocked a bunch of levels for me just right away. And because of that, like, there's literally no drive for me to go and do that, like anything. Like, you're already a decent level, you have a decent amount of gear because they give you a bunch of free money up front. Like, the game has already progressed far enough that I just I couldn't care about it at all. And actually what I'm doing right now is I'm replaying Dead Space 1 because that's a game that I could literally play 100 times and never get bored of because it's just a work of art. So yeah, I apologize. I don't remember. I really don't know. Davage13 asks, hey Ash, who recorded the music at the start of your videos? Loving what you do. That's Kevin MacLeod. Internet famous Kevin MacLeod. He's got tons of royalty-free music. You can go to incompetech.com. It's linked at the end of any of my videos and check out all of what he does. It's super cool. Ray Pascalis asks, hey Ash, really happy to see a piece of Ash. Would love to hear your thoughts of old Rackham miniatures. What happened? Confrontation 1843 were solid games in my opinion. What happened to Confrontation is a guy named Jean Bay, who was the head of Rackham at the time, and he decided that the future of miniature gaming was pre-painted plastic miniatures. And so they initially tried it. Just to give you some background, Rackham was a European miniature producer in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they specialized in very high quality, premium priced metal miniatures. So at the time, if you look at them now, the proportions are a bit strange. They had a very stylistic kind of style to them. But they did two things. When they got made, they were very high quality as far as like the components and the sort of stylization of them. So they were very artsy miniatures. And the painters that they hired to paint them painted them in ways people hadn't seen before. So if you want to see some of the first non-metallic metal paint jobs, which I would say started to kick off the non-metallic metal craze of the late 90s, early 2000s, you would look at the Rackham miniatures. So they had really cool sort of like Celt miniatures. They had these giant werewolves called the Wolfen. And they were a miniature line designed expressly to appeal to people who wanted to buy a few miniatures, paint them really nicely, and play a very sort of like detailed skirmish game with them. And me and my friends fell in love with the game because it was the first time that a company had tried to mass market that kind of gameplay experience. The contemporaries were all trying to do company-sized. When I say company-sized, I mean like a platoon. So like the standard old 40K detachment where you've got roughly 50 models. You've got some troop choices, you got some heavy support choices, a little combined arms, a leader cadre. That was the formula that most other games were trying to emulate. And Rackham was basically saying, buy whatever miniatures you think are cool, as long as you're from the same faction, and play a game with them. And we were like, this is the greatest thing ever, because we got to push our painting. We really enjoyed the miniatures themselves. Like the miniatures themselves were just of a style that was really cool. And we could play like 3 or 4 games in a night. And I played tons of those games. So there's the scene set, right? And then you got this fella that comes along, he's running the company. And he decides that's not the future of miniature gaming. They've been innovating for like probably 5 or 10 years now. This is probably around 2006, 2007. He makes this decision. They're going to release a new game. So they had a fantasy game called Confrontation, but they're going to release a new game. It's going to be a science fiction game. It's going to be based on Paul Prente's art style. And it's going to be called AT-43. And initially, it was actually supposed to be a World War II game, alternate timeline 43. But instead, they went and made it a sci-fi game after some deliberation. And the sci-fi version it keeps some of the styles that Paul did, I think, for the World War II version, but it's very much sci-fi. So it's like space gorillas and stuff. And the shocker was that instead of releasing it the way we all thought it was going to be released, which was as like high quality metal miniatures, they released it as a pre-painted plastic game. So it was all a bunch of out of the box, ready to go models. And I'll be honest, the pre-paints on those miniatures were some of the highest quality pre-paints I've ever seen on pre-painted models. I would say they stand up today as some of the nicest like out of the box pre-painted miniatures you could play with. You got terrain in the boxes. So you got like these containers. You'll see containers in my video sometimes. I have a box of 52 of those containers that I got with my buddy Jay from this Not Test. And they were really high quality components, but they were pre-painted. So the reception to it was kind of lukewarm. It was designed, I think, to try and bring more customers into that company's business by expanding to people that didn't want to paint and play. Because for 99% of the people playing Rackham games already, it was about the building and playing experience. So painting was a big component of that because you're pushing yourself to paint these beautifully sculpted miniatures. And so yeah, it broadened the market a little bit, but most of us looked at it and went, well, that's kind of neat. Like we tried painting a few of them, but you know, it's the same miniature over and over again because it's a pre-painted single sculpt. And it's not, there's a bunch of work to get it done because it's still got vinyl on top of a plastic frame. So it's not the best surface to paint on. But I own an entire UNA army that I use for lots of other indie sci-fi company level games that I repainted, my UNA Dark Stars. They're in a case somewhere. And that was cool. And it just kind of sat alongside Confrontation. Confrontation didn't change. But then Confrontation, the new edition was announced, 4.0, and it was going to pre-painted plastic. And it was company level. And it was no longer the game that we all wanted to play. And so they released that, I think, and there was a bunch of like press releases at the time too, talking about how this was the greatest thing ever and every gamer would want to play this game. And me and my friends who were all like, I would say, I can't speak for every Confrontation customer that was playing the game at the time, but I looked at it and it did 0 for me. It was exactly the opposite of what I had expected from that game that I love so much. It was pre-painted vinyl miniatures with very soft details that you needed a buttload to play a game with. And I went, okay, well, I guess we're just going to keep playing 3.5. And I guess for me, it was kind of like a mini Age of Sigmar if I was like a Warhammer Fantasy player. And I just didn't buy any of it. Like, and then I can't really tell you what happened, but I know that within a year, they were out of business. Like, they just went from trucking along pretty nicely to this company's gone, liquidate all their stock. And they were just finished. They went belly up, basically, like inside of 12 months. So I can't tell you those things were directly related, but I can say that from a business point of view, doubling down on telling your customers what they should like when you've basically spent years and years and years pushing a single direction in like your design philosophy, and then 180 and going the other way, you might gain some new customers, but you've definitely lost the core customer base that you initially built your business on. And that seemed to have gone terribly wrong. It is a game, though, that I am desperate to bring to Throwback Thursday. I really want to play Competition 3.5 just to show you guys the miniatures and just like what it was like. Because I talk about it all the time, and you guys hear me talk about it all the time. And it's a near and dear to thing to me. So if you've been lucky enough to find Confrontation miniatures lying around, there's still a huge, like, rabid fan base. I know in Europe, especially where it was from, that have like kept it alive. There's like a Facebook group that I casually look at sometimes, and I know is still doing some stuff with it. But it's in this like limbo now with who owns it, and that's sad. Mikey asks, how do I get started with 30k from a rule standpoint, specifically choosing a legion based on special abilities? Dude, that is like asking your favorite flavor of beer. Like I don't know you, Mikey, and I don't know what you like. There isn't going to be a best army really in 30k. Amongst the legions, at least. There's definitely an argument to be made that the Questoris Knight Errant spam list breaks the game, and that's the thing we've been talking about is how do you handle that if you're going to run events for 30k? Because my thing with 30k is 30k should be about the Marines and the legions and the Civil War happening. And if someone brings a min-maxed army of nothing but basic level knights and then forces you to fight them with guys with bolters, so that you just kind of auto lose, that's not a thing to do. So if you want to win, go to your local Games Workshop store, buy yourself 6 basic plastic knights, build them all as paladins or whatever the cheapest version of knight is, and build one as a big boss knight, and play a 2,000 point game against everybody that comes in and just laugh as they can't do anything to you. If you want to pick a legion based on abilities, then dude, just pick whatever legion you think looks cool, because they're all good. They've all got some, they're all the same. That's what people don't understand what 30k is. Everybody's the same stuff with some different flavored elites and characters and army special rules added on. But they're all still Space Marines at the end of the day. They all still have access to the same base units, and their elite units like change a little bit. But they're all just Space Marines and bolters. Guys with bolters, guys with bolters, guys with bolters. And they all have to take at least some guys with bolters. So I wouldn't fret that too much, and I would say 30k is a game that you should definitely play from the heart, because if you play it any other way, then that's kind of against the spirit of 30k, which is you're doing it for the love of the history and the period it's set in, not for a gaming thing. Because if you are, then whatever. It's not my thing. Gekillian asks, with the new plastic Magnus Primarch coming out, is there any other giant model you like to see CW produce in plastic? I don't like giant models, so I'm not really a good one to ask. I get so bored, like, because I don't like huge games that much. Like, I'm never a guy that you're going to see willingly play an Apocalypse game. Like, they just do nothing for me. I might play a team game where we're playing a game big enough to be an Apocalypse game where there's like 6 of us playing. We're all playing like a 1,500, 2,000 man army. But I probably wouldn't play an Apocalypse game because it's just too fast and too messy and there's not enough like, it's not dialed in close enough to the action for me. It's all too like strategic level. And I'd rather just play Epic at that point. Like, to play Apocalypse, just play Epic. And then you can really play with a lot of toys. Play with 1 Titan, why don't you play with 12 Titans? And we can do that with Epic, no problem. Whereas playing with 12 Titans in 30, 40k is just a monotonous thing to me. But if I was to say like mid-range size Titan get made in plastic, I'd like to see the Leviathan made in plastic. I think that'd be cool as heck, the big Leviathan. You could do a Leviathan / Duradio 30k kit. I think that'd be super cool. I think it'd be cool to see more of the because there's an Imperial Agents Codex coming out soon. I think it would be awesome if that Imperial Agents Codex meant that they were releasing plastic space cops. And I know one J who would probably have his wife leave him if they release plastic space cops because of the amount of plastic space cops that he would buy. And there would be a lot of like jokes about how sometimes the Space Marines still need to call 911 and space cops can come rescue them. But yeah, no, like, I think that's the thing I'd like to see, is I'd like to see more interesting, characterful Imperial agents in plastic, because those kits can get used for so many different things, and to me, that's the interesting thing in 40K. Not like the next big cool robot or next big airplane or something like that. I like all the little detailed model kits. That's why I loved like the Custodes box. I love the Scions box for the Guard. It's such a cool box. All these like little detailed kits that you can kit bash into like skirmish games. And I think it's more bits fodder for skirmish games. I think it's just like big robot-y things. I have no use for it really, because I play mostly skirmish games. And I go, meh, that's cool. Like, I look at it and I can appreciate it for what it is, but I'm not going to want to buy one. I have 3 knights put together that I haven't painted yet, because I just keep looking at them and being like I get exhausted just looking at them. Next up is... Go. Mr. Peabody. I'm a noob to the hobby and I'm debating between Kill Team box or the Dead Zone both box set. Any advice having played both? Really different experiences there, man. The Dead Zone box set, you can almost just play forever by itself and you probably won't have to buy a whole lot to add on to. Whereas the Kill Team box set is like an entry-level box to 40K. And you can still play with it tons, but like the Dead Zone, I guess you could argue that the Mantic one also builds into a Warpath, but that's not really the same thing. Because you're going to have a lot more opportunity. You can basically, I guess what I'll say is, you can basically play the Dead Zone one with some friends in your basement ad nauseum, almost forever, and you'll have everything for 2 people to play forever. Whereas with the Kill Team one, you're probably going to want to add to that, and you're probably going to want to grow into playing full 40K games. So I don't really know what you want. If you want to play skirmish games forever, then I would say the Dead Zone one. If you want to grow it into a bigger hobby later on, I'd say buy the 40K box set one, because the 40K box set one, it's obviously, you're gonna have more accessibility to play more games more often, probably, than playing Warpath, where you're more likely gonna have to buy 2 armies and it'll always be your 2 armies you're playing with. Christian Hoffman asks, what would you rather? Let Owen win all the games, or pretend to be Duncan Rhodes delivering a video tutorial every time you paint for the next 2 years? How do you know I don't already do that and talk to my miniatures as I paint them? I don't know. I mostly let Owen win all his games anyway. Actually, no, I can't do that. Owen completely loses interest in games if he wins them too easily. And he will come back and he gets more excited about games the harder they are to play. Because he's so stubborn that he wants to always defeat the challenge of being good at them. Which is why I want him to play a Blood Bowl team that is one of the hard level Blood Bowl teams, because I think he'd have more fun playing that. Because when he wins, it's a challenge as opposed to just winning. So I'm actually going to be giving him my Orc half from my my 2016 Blood Bowl starter in exchange for some more Skaven, because he won a Skaven box set as a door prize, like an event. And I'm going to be doing the Chaos Pact team as my humans under that. But yeah, we'll see, man. I don't really know. I'm not super sure how that's going to play out at the end of the day. I think I would much rather just, I guess, talk to my miniatures like Duncan Rhodes. I keep wanting to say Dusty Rhodes. If you're a wrestling fan, you understand what that means. Zed-sama asks, hey Ash, enjoy your channel, keep the good work. I want to know if you've ever tried any Osprey titles besides Frostgrave, like in Her Majesty's Name. I haven't played that one in particular. I do, however, have Chosen Men, which is the Sharps Rifles era Napoleonic skirmish. I've got Broken Legions, which is the classical period skirmish game, which I really want to try. And I have, what's the other one? Broken Legions. I've got Conflict 47, which we're going to be bringing in the new year. I got some friends we're going to be working on that with. What else do I have? Those are the specifically Osprey ones, though. And I have some friends who played On Guard and love On Guard, but I haven't played that one either yet. So yes, I haven't tried all of them. I've read the rulebooks. And of course, Rogue Stars. We'll be doing the next week or so. Old World Vulture asks, hi Ash, what are some good games being played in just 1 hour lunch breaks at work? I assume you don't mean miniature games. If you do mean miniature games, there is a version of Blood Bowl specifically designed to be played in a lunch break, which is called Sevens. So it's supposed to be kind of like a joke 7-a-side rugby. If you've ever played rugby, then you understand what I'm saying. But if you haven't played rugby, then you probably don't. but it's specifically designed to be played in a lunch break, just like you're sort of asking. The other half would be Kill Team. Kill Team for 40K was originally designed to be 40K in 40 minutes, which was an article on the, was it a Black Gobo article? It might have been a Black Gobo article from the US website, which would make it early mid-2000s one. It became Combat Patrol, and then it became Kill Teams. At any rate, it was designed to be done on a lunch break too, and again with like a small amount of models. So that's another good one, especially because that one has some, and just like the sevens for Blood Bowl, they both have some progression. So every lunch hour, you guys can learn some skills, get some XP, and get slightly better, basically. What else? More Time's good, but again, like we're starting to get into stuff that's terrain intensive. Like you can play Kill Team with a ton of terrain, although more terrain is better. Blood Bowl is just a board game, so I'd say Blood Bowl is probably the easiest to set up and tear down. And then outside of that, you're getting into like card games and board games. Like card games are of course one of the easiest. It doesn't involve miniatures though, so I don't know. I can't really answer that question because again, it doesn't really involve miniatures. X-Wing might be a good one. I don't have a ton of experience with X-Wing, I'll be honest, so I only know what I've sort of like gleaned from seeing friends play it and seeing it played, as opposed to playing it myself. I played Armada a whole bunch, but those games are designed to be quick and dirty too, 100-point games where ships just explode real fast, so I would say that those are another good candidate for that kind of game. I think those are some good options. Chamansky asks, when are we gonna get more Kings of War? You just got more Kings of War this week? Yeah, this week. Ranger, maybe last week. No, it'll be last week because it'll be this week when this is coming out. Yeah, so you just got more, and there's 2 more filmed in the pipe. What is it? Travis from Hot Dice Miniatures comes in, and he's got some bazillions I call them, Basilians, that he filmed a couple games with me with. So I got at least 2 more in the pipe filmed, and Owen and I are actually pretty jazzed about it. Clarence is coming back in the new year in April or so, because he's finished his teaching gig in Korea, and we'll be playing some as well. So. And I'm sure we'll play some between now and then too. So you should see lots more. I know there's some already filmed and actually just came out. So you probably asked this question before that came out. QMC and 1DJ asks, Mad Max, Road Warrior, Thunderdome, or Fury Road, and why? Well, if you asked me this question before Fury Road, I would say Road Warrior. And I would say Road Warrior because the Lord Humongous is a reasonable man, and that's the reason that you answer that question that way. That's a really tough one because they're all such different films. That's almost like asking which Alien film you like best because they're all so different. Alien is so different from Aliens, is so different from Alien 3. And if you've watched the quadrilogy cut of Alien 3, it is actually a fine David Fincher movie. And a lot of people forget it's a David Fincher movie. Yeah, no, that's a really different, because they're all so different. Because the first Mad Max is a story about a man breaking. The second Mad Max is about a man who's broken, like regaining some level of his humanity. And the third one is about a man who's basically like a complete outcast, deciding to remain an outcast. Like he gets no redemption at the end of that movie. He's left behind, and he's him and Auntie. Look at us, aren't we a pair? You're just a raggedy man. And then Fury Road almost stands alone because Fury Road is such a like. Fury Road isn't about Mad Max. Fury Road is about Furiosa. And Mad Max is just the lens that we see Furiosa through. Because even at the end of it, when she's like had her like, what is it during the hero's journey? They transcend. She's had her transcendent moment. She's become like the hero that she needs to be. Max is still broken. Like Max might like save her with like the transfusion and stuff, but he can't stay. Like he can't be a part of society. He can't be around people. He's too broken to be around people. And it's like, and that's of course what raises the question, is Tom Hardy actually Mad Max, or is Tom Hardy the feral kid from Road Warrior? And I subscribe to it being him being the feral kid from Road Warrior, grown up. And then Max has become a name in his like person, because he's the one doing the tell during Road Warrior. And Thunderdome is where you learn the term the tell. But the tell in Mad Max is the narration, whoever's telling the story alongside the story. And you realize that all the films are basically oral tradition storytelling. Like it's all the future sort of like post-apocalyptic legends. And I'm a firm subscriber that Tom Hardy in Fury Road is not the same person. It's not Max Rotentanski. Rodentanski? Yes, Rodentanski is how you pronounce his name. Even though he's credited in that name, It's that people just assume that name, like Spartacus, basically, and that they are heroes, but they're not actually the people that you think they are. So yeah, because everything about that movie makes it after Thunderdome. I'm pretty sure it's after Thunderdome. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. And so I would definitely choose Road Warrior if it's pre-Fury Road. But then once Fury Road's out, I can't choose between the first 3 and Fury Road, because the first 3 add up to this wonderful story, and then Fury Road, I think, just stands on its own as powerfully as the first 3 put together. So that's my answer. I think way too much about those films. Earthworm Jim. Hi Ash, if you were in the 40k universe, would you rather be a member of the Astartes, the Custodes, or the Inquisition, and why? I'd be a member of the Inquisition, because as bad as things are, you know, and like as dangerous as it is to be a member of the Inquisition, it depends on the Ordo you're in, actually. You could be the Ordo that just sits in the library and reads books. And while there's some dangerous books out there and dangerous knowledge, like you could just literally be a computer jockey, and have a nice, safe, regular sort of like inquisitorial life, unless you get assassinated by somebody or eaten by a space alien. Whereas the other 2, you're either never leaving the Imperial Palace and having the most boring life on Earth, talking to a dead god, or you're a mutilated, mutant, not human anymore guy, constantly being brainwashed into fighting and just fighting until you die. So I think the Inquisitor probably wins as far as like quality of life goes, and he has more power than any of the other ones put together. Like, because technically the Inquisition's power is unlimited. So even with the Custodes, like, I'm sure that they can't get past the Custodes because the Custodes would just kill them. But yeah, I would rather be an Inquisitor probably than any of those other things, because the Inquisitors, I think, make their own quality of life. Abaddon asks, I can't decide what army I want to play in Age of Sigmar. I'm stuck between Night Goblins, Tomb Kings, and Ironjaws. Which one will you choose and why? I'm going to give you probably what's an unpopular answer with the people that already play 2 of those armies, but I'd choose Ironjaws. The reason for that is there's some room for growth. With Night Goblins, the Moon Clan will probably actually get like a do-over and like brand new stuff at some point. I don't think Death is ever going to go back to Tomb Kings, because they actually got rid of a bunch of plastic kits, which they don't usually do if there's a plan to like keep that stuff in the range going forward, especially the fact they got rid of like the Necrosphinx and the, what's it called? The most powerful thing in the game. Not the Necrosphinx, the War Sphinx? I think it's the War Sphinx. Whichever one, no, it's the Necrosphinx, the most powerful thing in the game. That's not a Stonehorn. Yeah, so like the fact that those aren't in the range anymore makes me nervous, whereas like the Moon Clan are like a keyword, so they might get a book at some point. But the Ironjaws already have a book and can be combined with other things. So I would actually say Ironjaws, just because they are technically currently in the background, in the fluff. They're an era appropriate army. The models are gorgeous. I love the Brutes and I love the Maw Crusher. The Maw Crusher is maybe one of the coolest monster models Games Workshop's made ever. Like, it's just a really cool, brutish miniature. And the Ironjaws are some of the coolest, like, just melee miniatures, I think, and armored orcs that Games Workshop's ever done. So you got more longevity there. So if you're going to start something right for Age of Sigmar, I would do an army that is Age of Sigmar. That's like in the Age of Sigmar. Hive Mind Games asks, hey Ash, here's a question for you that my girl asked me the other day that made me laugh and then feel sad. If all your minis were in a jar, like a jelly bean count, what would your guess be on the number? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Oh man. Oh geez. Yeah, I have no idea. I have absolutely zero clue as to what to answer that. It's in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. It has to be I know it's in the thousands. Like, if you're talking about everything unpainted and painted, it might be in the tens of thousands. I'm pretty sure it's in the tens of thousands. Because there's at least, okay, how would you put it this way? I've painted almost 500 miniatures this year. And everything I painted this year is on these shelves, plus stuff from before. So there's close to 1,000 there's over 1,000 painted miniatures for sure on these shelves. I don't even know. And I don't even know how many I have in storage. You know what I mean? There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Like, each case could have, like, my dwarf army in a case is over 200 miniatures. And that's one case. And every other carrying case holds at least 110 guys, maybe 150 guys. And there's like 50 cases back there. So, like, this is a lot of miniatures. Michael asks, hey Ash, should we be looking into playing the Batman miniature game? You're going to see the Let's Play for that this week. God Machine asks, what do you think about the new Leman Russ model by Forge World? I think he is cool beans. He's a nice miniature. He's a bit of an homage to the old metal Road Trader one that I still have. I do wish he came with his wolves. The fact that he doesn't come with, I don't think he comes with Frecky and Gary. And if they're going to do a Leman Russ miniature, it should come with Frecky and Gary. I was bummed that it didn't come with Frecky and Gary, because that should just be a thing that Leman Russ always has in 30K. And it I could just be wrong, but I don't remember from looking at the miniature a pair of wolf miniatures that were with him. But he's cool. He's a beautiful miniature. Nick Toyo asks, what's the best way to run a campaign? Having trouble balancing one. Don't try. There is no such thing as a balanced campaign. There will always be runaway players, and there will always be runaway stuff. The best thing you can do to balance a campaign is have an emerging narrative and create events that try and rebalance the campaign. So what you can do is, if you have a runaway player, then you can allow alliances. You can allow people to team up on them, because that would literally be what would happen in a real war. If someone gets out of control, it's more likely to create a political solution where two sides then join forces against the middle and gang up and win. You could take the Allies in the Second World War and use that parallel, and it's pretty much appropriate. Like, someone's getting out of hand, so despite our differences, we're going to team up and we're going to take these people down. And I think that's, you can't plan for it because you never know who it's going to be or how it's going to happen. But what you can do is you can have the players themselves sorted out by creating tools for them to use, basically tools for them to employ inside the campaign to self-balance it and to have the balance come from them. Because the problem is, as a campaign manager, anytime you use your authority to fix a problem, someone's going to be unhappy and someone's going to be happy. Right? So you're creating people that are going to want to play the campaign again, people that aren't. If you put the emphasis on the players and the people know that by getting out of control, there's a risk, when people team up on them, he's asked for it, but he's created the situation in which other people are ganging up on him. So he owns the result, and he's not going to be as likely to be upset by it, because it's not you enforcing the result on him. It's him having the other players basically self-regulate the whole thing. And that would be my thing with balancing a campaign. Create a system in which the players can do it themselves. Danny Sexbang asks, what do you want to see in the next edition of 40K? I don't know. Because on one side, I know that 40K is always going to be about selling as many models to people as possible, because that's how business stays in business, and that's fine. There's nothing about that that's wrong. But that's not necessarily going to be something that attracts me, right? Big shiny models aren't something I'm super interested in. Playing with lots of models aren't things I'm super interested in. Playing big games isn't something I'm super interested in. But those are all things that go hand in hand with selling lots of models to lots of people. So that's a hard question for me to answer, because I'm not necessarily the target market for 40K. So I'm not necessarily going to be... The thing I wish for is probably not going to come true. What I'd like to see in the next edition of 40K, if I'm being completely honest, is more expansions that let you play the game different ways. So Kill Team is a good example of that. Kill Team is more my jam, right? Kill Team is more, you get to play with less models, you play with the models you like, but it's still pretty much designed as a 40K light. It's a way of introducing people to 40K, and they still build armies using all the structures from 40K. So you don't get to buy individual models, unless you're playing Heralds of Ruin Kill Team. You're still buying units. And I'm talking all about official stuff from GW. Not talking about fan expansions here, so that's not part of this conversation. So for me, I think the thing I would like to see is more ways of taking the existing 40K model line and playing with just the models you like and being able to pick just the models you like. So something like, if they brought back, so for instance, if they were interested in bringing back specialist games, if they were to bring back Inquisitor, of course, in 28mm, because it should just use the existing model line, because that's a very important thing, is maybe make a business decision, have them buy the things you sell. And don't make them rebuild a bunch of stuff. Like, don't make them make a whole new set of miniatures or terrain and stuff to go along with it. But then they created it in such a way that all of your existing resources stay the same. So you still pull model by model guys from codexes, and all it gives you is the format and the infrastructure for doing so. So like, if you're playing Inquisitor and you're building your kill team, and there's a bunch of structures for how an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor goes about recruiting his warband from all the various 40K codexes, or how a Order Ordo Xenos one does the same, and how he can include aliens and stuff like that. And then they do a big list of additional models, you know what I mean, of like people that can come in. But it's all just stuff that's in the current 40K universe. That would be the kind of game that would get me super excited to go back to my 40K collection and paint Warbands of Guys. So something like what we were talking earlier about the 6th edition Path to Glory, something like that for 40K, but you're going model by model, and you're just building and painting the models that you want. And it's not replacing 40K. This isn't a new edition of 40K. It's, hey, here's the new edition of 40K, but here's a whole bunch of other ways of playing the game apart from, you know, big detachments, combined arms, blah, blah. It still uses the core rulebook, so it's like 30K. You don't throw the rulebook away. The rulebook's the same. But here's a bunch of new missions. Here's a bunch of new ways of building your little crews. Here's a bunch of new terrain rules and blah, blah. And it's like making mods for Half-Life, you know what I mean? Where here's a mod for 40K, and here's a cool way of doing it. And that's kind of, I think, the thing where 40K can have so many different layers. If you're into playing just tank battles, they kind of did that with Escalation, but like you could do a really good expansion for 40K that's just about using tank profiles and playing with tanks. Death from the Skies, the little dogfighting mini game, could have just been a game with airplanes, you know, and just have people who are excited about airplanes play games with airplanes. I think there's literally limitless possibility in the 40K game because the core mechanics handle most of it fairly well, where you just release supplements that give people tons of ways of playing with the toys they already own. And they've kind of scratched that with Apocalypse, and they kind of scratched that with a couple different games. But I think you can go further and give people who are excited about a certain type of model a really wonderful gameplay experience and a reason to buy more of the models they like, you know, a reason to buy a number of Lehman Russes past the combined arms attachment, which, I mean, people argue that's what the Apocalypse game is for, but it's not the same, you know. And as much as I advocate and love the idea of let the gamers do it for themselves, let them write that expansion, let them do that, tragically, that is not the way that the miniature wargaming world is wired anymore, and people just aren't willing to do that. I wish they were, but you have to do everything for people. They're just waiting to be handed stuff, and there's this purveying sense out there in the world that if it's not officially made by a company, it's not real, and no one's going to play it with you. And so I think it does sit on Games Workshop's shoulders to give people permission to buy and play with the toys that they want to buy and play with, which is sad because I don't think it should be that way, and I don't think Games Workshop should have to do it, but I think if they want people to have that permission, they're probably going to have to end up writing it for themselves. Which sucks, but that's just the way the world works. I'm going to do one more. Terrible. Always terrible. That has to be Clarence. That has to be Clarence, because only he and I know the person probably still that would always say that. How do you think 9th edition Fantasy and Kings of War are faring in Southern Ontario compared to Age of Sigmar? Age of Sigmar is 10 times the size of both those communities. I'm sorry to say. I'm not even sorry to say. I'm sorry. I think that's not what you want to hear. Age of Sigmar events are doing really well. Tons of people are in stores playing Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar is selling really well. I think when you see the distributor reports for Age of Sigmar, people will be surprised by how well it's doing. I know that people are always asking to come play Age of Sigmar with me, but I have to drag people in to play the other games. In Southern Ontario especially, man, and I'm not saying there aren't communities for those other two games, and that there aren't great communities for those two games, because there are, but they are not the same. There are probably more people playing Age of Sigmar in the average Games Workshop store in Southern Ontario than there are in like the organized communities for all those other games. So like take one Games Workshop store, their Age of Sigmar gaming night, the number of like people coming and playing that is probably bigger than the entire like sort of like centralized Ninth Age community that's organized and all playing together. You know what I mean? And Kings of War probably close, because Kings of War's got a relatively well connected group. I think there's probably 30 or 40 people maybe in the Southern or the Ontario group, and some of them are even playing together, but not all of them live near each other, and not all of them play together. So it's not nearly as big. I will tell you that for sure. Ben asks, any chance of the new Heavy Gear Blitz battle reports using some of the new plastics painted up? Thanks, great show and keep the good work. I don't have any. Miles, who my primary opponent is, doesn't have any either, because neither of us really do Kickstarters. So unless I somehow acquire some in the next little while, which I have a huge backlog of unpainted Heavy Gear stuff that is the same miniature, so why would I not just paint the ones I already have? Then probably no. If someone sent me some, I'd probably paint them up just to show them off, but I don't have any, and I don't really have any need to buy any because I have tons of unpainted Heavy Gear stuff I haven't painted yet. Oh, man. Soran's Optometrist asks, Ash, I often find myself frustrated by 40k in the past few months. Even though I want to enjoy myself, have you ever loved a game, then suddenly lost interest in it, and can you share any advice? Yes. And I don't usually suddenly lose interest in things. I usually lose interest in things over time. And I don't want to say I've lost interest in 40k. I like 40k a lot. I love 30k. The problem is it's hard for me to find opponents that play the game the same way I'm interested in playing it. And so that tends to be my challenge with those games. Not that I don't like the games. It's that playing it a certain way, I don't feel anything while I'm doing it. And so I'm less likely to want to repeat that experience than I am if I'm playing the game the way I want to play it. So for instance, I'd love to do like a 28 mil Inquisitor campaign, but nobody around here wants to do that. I'd love to do more Herald's Ruin stuff, but there's not many people doing it. There's tons of people playing ITC games. I don't want to build a collection of random things based on formations. If I build a collection of 40k miniatures, I want to tell a story and have a theme, not to be whatever the best combination of effects are with a random pile of models. Like, I look at a lot of army lists these days when I see like this event, that event, and I wouldn't even be able to tell if it was legal or not, because I don't even know. Like, it's just a random pile of characters and a random pile of models. And you know, in my sort of like era of 40k, you could all kind of like correct each other, because everyone would generally know what the combined arms attachment looks like and how everything would fall into that. But it's not even really recognizable anymore. So I kind of struggle with that, because as much as I want to play 40k and I want to enjoy playing 40k, I really have a hard time doing it, because half the time I don't even know what I'm looking at, and things are being taken purely for what they do in the game a lot of the times, and there's no emerging story when I play the game. So I get no emotional satisfaction of it, and I have no desire to like do it again, if that makes sense, which is sad. But winning a game is not my focus. Having a shared experience with my opponent is more my focus, and if I don't get that from a game, I'm less likely to want to do it again. C12 asks, this will be the last question. You mentioned that you prime your minis with an airbrush. Let's say you're priming a Blood Angel. Would you go Abaddon Black, then Mystificus Red, or Mystificus Red directly? So I base coat my miniatures with an airbrush, unless I'm using an airbrush primer. I will typically prime everything, whatever the nearest color is to what I'm doing. So if I was doing Mephiston Red, I probably wouldn't do it red first. I'd probably prime it black, then airbrush it brown, then highlight it with red, then highlight it with red again, and then paint on the rest of the highlights by hand, edging them. So you never really want to go black to a color. You typically want to go from whatever the nearest tone is. So like, if I was doing yellow, I'd probably prime them white or gray, airbrush them brown, like a very pale, like dun brown, and then airbrush them to yellow, maybe mustard even, then yellow, then edge highlight them or whatever. It's very rare that I'll go just like a straight light dark tone to a color. I'll usually do something in between there. And I find brown is the most forgiving color to do that with. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. This is my piece of Ash for December 2016. So we'll see you guys again in January. If you do want to ask me a question for next month, you can click the link in the video description below. Get your questions in, because I do answer them in order. And if I didn't get to your question this time, hopefully I'll get to it next time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time for more Piece of Ash. Then I'm Ash. Have a good day.